Hello everyone, and thank you for coming. Today I want to tell you about an animal that I'm very interested in. Have you ever looked in your backyard and noticed a light buzzing sound similar to an insect, only to notice a tiny bird hovering around the plants before disappearing in a blur? What you saw was a curious hummingbird. Their flashy appearance and their hectic lifestyle is very important to actually surviving the lives that they live. The way their body moves, the way how they find and utilize food, and their strict yearly routine is all essential to how they work on an everyday basis. In preparation for this presentation, I researched a number of books by nature specialists as well as articles from magazines pertaining to the lives and functions of hummingbirds. I've always set up feeders in my backyard, like the one here, to attract them for years, and I have always been curious about why they live the way that they do. So I relished this opportunity to do some research into the subject. So today I'm going to explain how the hummingbird can move at the high speed rate that it does, how they can provide themselves the energy that they need, as well as where they can be found throughout the year. To help with my presentation, I provided a PowerPoint with images as well as a few other props for demonstration. To start off, let's look at what makes the hummingbird hum. For an animal as small as it is, the hummingbirds possess a very strong body capable of flapping its wings fast enough to not only hover, but move in any direction as well. According to zoologist Robert Burton in his book, The World of the Hummingbird, these birds can flap their wings around 80 beats per second, but have also been observed flapping up to 200 beats per second during display flights. To put this into perspective, the average bird, such as the chickadee, only beats about 25 beats per second. Such rapid flapping usually leads to the signature hum that the bird gains its name for. But just flapping its wings at a high speed doesn't automatically mean to hover. The hummingbird's wings are also specifically designed to be short and able to move in a pendulum-like fashion that basically works out so the hummingbird can have two helicopter blades on the side of its body, and it can move in whatever dimension it desires. So the tail feathers of the hummingbird are specially designed to not only help with the bird's flight, but also uniquely shaped that they make noise during courtship displays. When the male wants to gain the attraction of the female, he flies far in the air above her head, about 120 feet, before dive bombing towards her. And while he slows down, he spreads his tail feathers, and the air current will make a specific noise. For example, here is the Costus hummingbird. Very musical. But then we also have the Calliope hummingbird, which is the smallest bird in North America. Which, as you see, it's a little less on the musical side and more of on, sounds like something else. Now, as Professor Burton explains, the movements of the hummingbird are very rapid and constant. For the body to function like it does, heartbeat has to beat about 1,200 beats per minute. To compensate for these functions and the constant movements and the heartbeat, they have to provide themselves with enough fuel to function on a daily basis. Now you may be wondering, how do hummingbirds manage to get all the energy they need on a regular basis? Now it's a common sight to see the bright red hummingbird feeders set up in yards across the country filled with sugar water, which is very similar to the nectar that they find in flowers that they visit. Naturally, the birds seek out the brightly colored nectar-producing flowers. Usually red's the color they like, which is why most hummingbird feeders that you find are red. And they can visit about 2,000 flowers within a day. The high amount of sugar found in these is important for the hummingbird to function, but it's not the only thing that hummingbirds need to survive. Hummingbirds mostly get their protein and from the necessary daily proteins off of insects they catch, and occasionally spiders and other small invertebrae. According to the book Hummingbirds, Jewels in Flight by Connie Toops, they can eat about half their weight in insects each day, which, to put that in perspective, we eat about 1% of our body weight each day. When hummingbirds catch the small insects, they just grab them out of the air with their beaks, but mostly their entire body is designed to drink nectar out of flowers. The entire reason they can hover seems to be able to gain easier access to flowers that may be blowing in the wind. Their beaks are long enough to reach the bottom of the flower, and their tongues are long enough that they can reach the nectar that may have accumulated at the bottom of said flower. The nectar is high in sugar and also provides the calories and electrolytes it's necessary for the hummingbird to operate the way that it does. The tongue is quite long, and it actually curls behind the hummingbird's eye when it's within its mouth. When it sticks it out, it basically forms a longer natural tongue shape. Now you may notice that the hummingbird's tongue, if you're facing it, forms a somewhat of a curvy X shape. That's because whenever it sticks its tongue out of its mouth, it forms into two tube-like shapes, but it doesn't suck the nectar out like a straw. Instead, it laps it up using the grooves in the tongue so that it can bring it back into its mouth before digesting it. When finding sugar becomes a little difficult, which they may not be able to find on a regular basis, the hummingbird has a unique way to compensate for that as well. Christine Lessière of New Scientist Weekly magazines explains that when they enter a sleep-like state known as torpor, the bird's heart rate drops from nearly 1,000 beats per minute to about 50. This is essentially like a miniature hibernation that the bird can enter just about any time of the year. Its body temperature drops nearly 90%, and it can stay that way overnight. Usually when the morning comes and it warms up, it can return back to its normal bodily functions, so it can find more nectar, and the flowers that may have been low on nectar the day before will have restocked by the next day. So living the high-strung life of the hummingbird means that it's asked to live by a very strict schedule as well, which may lead you to ask what goes into the yearly schedule of the hummingbird. They have a very strict schedule that allows no time for waste. The only ones found in North America travel south for the cooler seasons and fly north to breed during the spring and summer. According to the book Hummingbirds of North America by Sherry L. Williamson, the only variety found in this part of the United States is the ruby-throated hummingbird. Here's an example of a male with its signature red throat feathers. The female is slightly larger and has a brown and gray throat feathers instead. This species travels from around the Gulf of Mexico during the fall and winter season, all the way up north as far as Canada once the spring and summer hits. Once they're settled in for the summer, the birds establish a territory for themselves, and it's called a trap line. They have a series of flowers that they visit every day, so where they go down the line. They are also extremely territorial. Hummingbirds do not like other hummingbirds and will often be found fighting each other if you have a feeder in your backyard. The hummingbird itself makes about 3 nests a year. The female does all the work caring for the babies, and the male has nothing to do with their upbringing. The nests are quite small. They typically only have about 2 eggs each time. The nest is essentially about the size of this tray here. It's about 2 inches across by 1 inch deep. The nest is typically made out of things such as cobwebs, spider webs, and moss, stretchable materials, so that the nest will actually grow with the body of the young baby birds. Once they're big enough, they'll follow the adults around for a short amount of time before finally going off on their own. Once temperatures begin to drop, the ruby-throated hummingbird will make its way down south again to warmer regions, and it will repeat the cycle for about 6 years. However, some have been known to live up to 12 years. But now that you've learned about hummingbirds and how they live, let's review. In conclusion, a hummingbird lives a very unique life that requires a very uniquely stylized body. Being able to provide the nutrients in order to fuel themselves is essential, and as they are well equipped to continually be able to do that. And they are able to continue their fast-paced life cycles by sticking to a very strict schedule that allows them to travel to areas like our own each year. Hummingbirds live a life only an animal specialized as them could live, all in order to continue their hectic yet beautiful lives. As Georges Louis Leclerc wrote in Hummingbirds in the History Naturelle, of all animated beings, this is the most elegant in form and the most brilliant in color. The stones, the metals polished by art are not comparable to this gem of nature. Thank you for listening today.